Welcome to Curator with a Camera. I'm Anthony Coulls, Senior Curator at the National Railway Museum, and we're here at Locomotion today to look at a legend of the tracks, the Wickham Trolley. Perhaps the smallest self-propelled standard gauge railway vehicle in the collection. The Wickham Trolley is typical of thousands of its type, not only in the UK but worldwide. The bedrock of every railway system is the track, the permanent way. But like every part of a system, it needs maintenance, it needs repair and it needs inspection. Now, prior to the Wickham Trolley, gangs of track workers, permanent waymen, got to their place of work on foot, by normal train, or walking from the end of a platform. Now, this took time because they were on foot. They had these hand-propelled trolleys which they pushed with their tools to where they needed to be. Motorising a track maintenance trolley in the 19th century was not really an option because the only form of power was the steam engine. Now, the steam engine was heavy, it required getting ready, getting up steam, that took time. But with the onset of the internal combustion engine, the petrol engine, and the First World War, it saw the revolution in technology that meant that power units, the petrol engine, which was light, efficient and effective, could reach new applications, one of which was rail transport. There had already been experiments by other companies of making self-propelled trolleys for inspection gangs, for engineers to examine the line, and these were being tried out across the world. The American company Fairbanks Morse was a pioneer of this. Elsewhere in the UK, Bagley Cars of Burton-on-Trent were trying out petrol rail cars to see how it worked. Enter Wickham of Ware and their managing director James Cooper, who saw an opportunity to enter that market. You know, Ware in Hertfordshire, it's not an industrial heartland. Initially, the Wickham Trolley found its use around the world. Places like Sri Lanka, West Africa, all over. But Wickham want to break into the UK market. They try pushing the door of the L&ER company. And James Cooper of Wickham manages to get a meeting with Sir Nigel Gresley, Chief Engineer of the London North Eastern Railway. And Gresley said to him, if you can make me something that is better than these US and other imports, then I'll give you a hearing. And the result was the Type 17 Wickham Trolley, of which we see one of the earliest examples behind us here. So let's go and have a look at it and see how it works. The Wickham Trolley. Small, perfectly formed, cute, well, certainly small it is. What actually is it? It is, very simply, a four-wheel trolley. A small steel frame underneath with a light wooden body on the top and a pressed steel wheel, not quite on each corner. The Wickham Trolley was designed to take permanent way workers to their track inspection, to where it needed to be looked at, and it was intended to be fairly fast, fairly light. It's made out of timber. Very similar construction to a garden shed with a light waterproof canvas roof along the top, and then if the weather is particularly poor, then there's the canvas also will roll down the side and provide some degree of protection. It also has windows at the front and the back so that you can see when it's on the track where you're going. What else have we got on it? Well, not much really. It is a self-propelled trolley, but it's quite fascinating because it's an early example of internal combustion on a railway. And you can see on the front there is the British Railways totem, so well known as part of the look of BR from the 1950s and 1960s. And also this maroon of coaching stock, this is a departmental red colour that stood it out as a piece of plant to do a job. So this would have come out of service in the 1960s, but Wickham trolleys were made in their hundreds throughout the 1960s with steel bodies. So that, there's a whole evolution of the things, but This particular type of trolley, the Type 17, this was the most numerous on the LNER. The LNER bought 404 of them throughout the UK. The LNER, London, Midland and Scottish Railway, Great Western Railway and Southern Railway took 717 of these things into service ultimately. The Wickham Trolley's place in popular culture was assured. If you've ever seen the Great St Trinian Trains Robbery from the late 1960s with actors like Frankie Howerd in them, the headmistress and her team chase the stolen train in a Wickham trolley. It's a really great piece of film.
Are you quite sure you know how to work this sort of thing, neighbour?
Not in the least. One can but try.
Yes.
Coming to the front, what do we see? Well, we've already talked about the roof and that canvas tilt there, and you can see these wooden laths are what hold the canvases on the side down, and then you can strap them to the side of the body to keep it and stop it getting blown away. A little lamp bracket here, so you can put a headlamp or a tail lamp on, which denotes when it's a train on the track, the direction it's going and what sort of thing it is. So if this is actually the back of it, it would have a little red lamp on the back. If it's the front, of course, it will be displaying a white aspect. And then held up by curatorial blue string attached to the starting handle for that petrol engine. Petrol engines didn't have starter motors initially. They were started by hand. So you would push the handle in to a small dog clutch and then spin the engine over by hand. With a bit of luck, it would start, and then once you'd started, you could jump on and away you went. So that is the nuts and bolts, or the planks and handles of the exterior of the Wickham trolley. But what about what's in the heart of it? What makes it go? Let's have a look in here. This is a very convenient little hole because the petrol engine was in its infancy at the time that the Wickham trolley was developed. So it's an air-cooled engine, and you need to let the air in. So there's no radiator. Later models had radiators, of course, but here is the engine itself. So there's our starting handle here, which goes down through this shaft to the engine at the end. And that engine there is a JAP engine. JA Prestwich was the company, and it's called a V-twin because there are two cylinders shaped in a V working to a single crankshaft, and that type of engine is very, very similar to those used on Brough motorbikes. So Brough were very much the Rolls-Royce of the British motorbike industry, and it's really quite nice that there's a crossover of technology between the motorbike world and the railway world. But what else underneath? Well, of course, an audible warning. Everybody asks, where's the horn? There's the horn, and certainly you'd hear this thing coming. So there is the power unit, the heart of the Wickham trolley. So that is what makes it go. How do we make it go? Let's go and have a look at the driving position. So we've got some of the bit of how it works, and we've seen that the engine here is mounted right there underneath the passenger compartment, underneath the seats. So it keeps you nice and warm on a winter's day when you don't really want to be going to a work site. And there's the magneto on the engine as well. But how does it make the drive from the engine to the wheels? Well, what you can see here is a friction plate, a clutch plate as it were, which would have had a special material across the front of it there, and then that would engage with this disc here with the use of this lever. You can see it moving almost like a clutch. So with the lever right behind us, you can see that the wheel is not engaged with that drive plate. As I pull it forward, then that wheel is now engaged with the plate. It won't do very much now because it doesn't have the special friction material that would enable it to grip, But that friction material contained asbestos. It had to have asbestos in it because the temperatures in that drive would get very high, and for it to be able to work effectively it needed to be fireproof. You didn't want a Wickham trolley going up in smoke, particularly with the wooden body on top of the steel frame. Direction is very, very simple. It's through this lever here, and it moves that plate across. Those splines on that shaft there enable this plate to be slid from one side to the other, because of course whilst the engine is only running in one direction, if you move this wheel from this side to the other side, it actually turns in the other direction. It's one of those things of physics and engineering which is quite fun. So forward and reverse would have been by sliding this from one side to the other. What else have we got? Very, very basic. Grip on steel wheels on steel rails is all important, and so it has very, very basic rudimentary sanding gear with this handle here operating through from the sandbox to sandpipe down onto the track, which would enable it to grip rather than spin and slide everywhere and not get to where it wanted to be. In terms of equipment, you have very little with a Wickham trolley. There's a tool rack here where you may well have kept things like lamps and a lookout horn and a few other tools like spanners and a hammer and a couple of screwdrivers. And down here, bear in mind this is for track work, this is a metal box which most likely would have had things like detonators in there, detonators being explosive devices to protect the tracks and protect trains. So you put them on the track, train goes over it, it goes bang, and it provides an audible warning. You want to keep detonators dry, so you keep them in a nice tin warm box. Who's to say that sandwiches didn't end up in there from time to time? The Wickham trolley wasn't an entirely feeble machine. They could actually pull a separate trolley behind them, not a powered one, but like a flat wagon that would be able to carry heavier tools such as jacks and hand tools. And so there is a very small tow hitch there. So let's have a look at the driving position. So we've seen those controls on the hand, and let's get onto it and have a look at how it all fits together. Here we are in the Wickham trolley. This is your forward view as you're driving it along. Now bear in mind that I've also got members of the track gang sitting here, so my view is either through that window or hanging out of the side. I'm hoping that it's not a wet and windy day, because otherwise this canvas will be there right down across, so all my view will be through that postage stamp. You know, we have that rail to hold on to in the middle, or perhaps put your back against if you wish. The direction handle here, petrol cap, not that you want to be filling it on the move, or certainly when the engine was operating, but there is the choke to advance and retard ignition. There's our throttle there, the horn and the clutch and the handbrake, and this brass plate here, very much worn away by years and years of sitting and use and polishing, but it does actually offer some instructions to the driver of what they needed to do and how to engage the gear. Only do it whilst the engine is idling, so that you're not putting undue forces against the engine and the drive gear itself. So really important, but very much worn away and pretty much illegible today. But there we have again also that plant number, so that the LNER accountants could work out what it is and where it was at any one time. But you've still got to remember this is simply a tool to do a job. But it does it very effectively, it does it efficiently, and it revolutionises track maintenance on the railway. So what's the legacy of the Wickham trolley? Well, this Type 17 was so successful in the 1930s that by nationalisation, the London North Eastern Railway owned over 400 of them. The big four railway companies in total owned over 700, and by the time that British Railways was ordering steel-bodied ones in the 50s and 60s, There were well over 2,000 of these in use on the British Railway network. Whilst Wickham are no longer creating rail trolleys, small inspection cars by Bants and other makers are still in use across the national network today. Thanks for joining us today for Curator with a Camera. If you've enjoyed it, why not like and subscribe? But we'd also like you to comment if you can and suggest future vehicles you'd like us to look at.